Good morning, everyone. Hey, it's good to see you. Today we are continuing to chip away at this idea of forgiveness. For the past couple weeks, we have had this conversation where we have broken down what it means to forgive and what a challenge looks like in order to be a person that forgives like Jesus. And so as we've been working through this process, we kind of laid the groundwork week one that if we're going to expect it, we need to live it. Okay, we can't expect forgiveness if we're not going to live forgiveness. And we kind of, our baseline for this whole series is we become the most like God when we forgive. We become the most like God when we forgive, that the character and the quality of God is built on this act of forgiveness. And that when we choose to extend forgiveness, we become the most like God on this earth. Last week, we continued to talk about it and how we are people that need grace, and so we give grace. We're people that need grace, and so we give grace. And as we've been walking through this idea of forgiveness, we've been studying a book together. It's a really short book in the New Testament called Philemon. And it's more of a note than a letter, but it's written by this guy named Paul. And Paul is writing to another believer, his name is Philemon, and asking him for something. You see, as Jesus followers, as people who belong as the church, you and I, we have a deeper responsibility of forgiveness. It's not a do and don't list, but rather it's a quality of who we are. Forgiveness should be in our DNA as Jesus people. And because we are Jesus people, we live out forgiveness. Paul, as he continues to write today, gets to the crux of what he is asking of Philemon. Before we get into that, I want to pray, and then we'll jump in. Jesus, we are thankful this morning that we can worship you. We're thankful that we can sing. God, I'm thankful that we can just be together. And as people who have made a mistake this week, people who have regrets this week, God, we've probably let someone down. God, we've not done something right. But God, we meet here recognizing that we find life in you. We find forgiveness in you. We find hope in you. And so, God, I pray this morning that you'll encourage where you need to encourage. I pray that you will equip those in the room that need to be equipped. God, I pray that you'll give courage to those who need courage. God, I pray this morning that you will calm anxieties and fears. Lord, that you will speak to us and that we will be humble enough to listen. Jesus, we're thankful for what you did on a cross, the grace that you bring to our lives. And because of that, God, as a room full of people, as we've made mistakes, we can come to you right now. Jesus, we're thankful for who you are. It's in your name we pray. Amen. This has happened several times in town, but a couple years ago, I was sitting over at Raspberry's eating lunch, and I was sitting with the rest of the staff, and we had just sat through a staff meeting throughout the morning, and then we went out to lunch together just to have fun and laugh, and we were talking about a few things coming up here at the church and making sure we had plans and, all of that, but we were just laughing together, having a good time. And while we were sitting there eating lunch, there was a couple different people that came in and left that were from the church, and they waved at us and we said hi and things like that. We got our food and we finished eating and we were sitting there just visiting with one another. We were also expecting them to come and drop that ticket off. And I've always held to the idea that if you're at a restaurant and they don't bring you your ticket, if you get up to leave, they magically always find your ticket, right? Okay, and so we sat there for a long time. And the ticket never came, and we were all ready to go. We had work to do back here at the office. And so I said to the guys, let's just walk up there. I said, I bet they'll find it. And so we stood up, and we pushed our chairs in. We walked up to the register, and we stood there. There was no one at the register. And finally, someone walks over, and she said, can I help you? I said, well, we need our ticket so we can pay for lunch. And she said, it's already been taken care of. And we kind of looked at each other like, what? And she said, someone already paid for your guys' meal. I said, wow, that's great. I said, can you tell me who it was? And she just kind of smirked. And she gave us a couple hints as to who it was, and they were still in the restaurant. So we went and talked to them and, just told them how appreciative we were that they covered our tab. They paid for our ticket. We didn't deserve it by any means. It was a gracious action to show love in a practical way. That's all it was, and it's happened several times. And a gracious action, when someone steps in and does that for you, it's not deserved, but it's appreciated. You see, what Paul is asking Philemon of today is a lot like that day at Raspberries. Just to catch us all up, Paul is writing this note, this letter, to a man named Philemon who lives miles and miles and miles away, over 1,000 miles away, because Philemon's slave Onesimus has run away. He ran all the way up to Rome, which happened to be where Paul was at. Paul knows Philemon. Okay, so he leads Onesimus to be a Jesus follower and to carry on this gospel message, but part of him being obedient, he recognizes, is that Onesimus needs to go back to Philemon. Now, the offenses against Onesimus when he returns home is punishable by death. And so Paul writes this letter, this note, to send on ahead, to send with them, to say, Philemon, before you react, I want you to consider these things. Philemon, before you respond, I want you to recognize who you are and what the way that you are living. And then Paul is going to ask for something incredible. And this is where we find ourselves this morning. If you brought a Bible, we're going to be in Philemon. There's only one chapter, so it's just verse 17, which is where we're going to pick up. It's right where we left off last week. Philemon, verse 17. And this is how it reads. It says, so, if you, meaning Philemon, consider me a partner, welcome him as you would welcome me. If he has done any wrong or owes you anything, charge it to me. I, Paul, am writing with my own hand. I will pay it back. Not to mention that you owe me your very self. I do wish, brother, that I may find some benefit from you in the Lord. Refresh my heart in Christ. This is the crux, this is the climax of this whole note as Paul writes to Philemon and says, listen, as Onesimus is received, and we're going to walk through these words. Right out of the gate, we read this word so, it means therefore. Okay, it can also be translated therefore, which means that Paul is connecting everything to what he just has written. Okay, if you remember, Paul is connecting to, since you are a man of faith, since you love the saints. Okay, since you are a man who loves the people around you, you care for the people around you, since you are a man who practices this, then therefore, since I am standing alongside of you, I could order you, but I'm not going to, since I'm standing alongside of you and you are a man of faith, therefore, I write to you this request. He says, if you consider me a partner, this word partner, it means on the same team, literally means of the same party. So therefore, because of this quality of who you are, therefore, if we are on the same team, if we're both on Team Jesus, if we are claiming to this faith, if we are holding tight to the message of Jesus, if we are working together to grow the church, if we are working towards the same goal, if we claim the same faith, if we claim the same Jesus, then welcome him as you would welcome me. This word welcome also means receive. Okay, receive him as you would receive me. Paul is a man during this time period that if you got a letter from him and he said, hey, I'm going to be stopping by your house later on this week. If you were in these shoes, you received this letter from Paul, then you would get your house ready and you would prepare for him to come. And when he comes, you would give him a big hug and say, Paul, I'm so glad you're here. Come on in, sit down. We've got a meal for you. Have a seat there on the couch. And it would be a great event. However, if the runaway slave comes, you're probably not swinging the door open. You're probably not preparing a meal. You're probably not even cleaning your house because you know full well the runaway slave is never stepping foot in your house. What Paul is asking of Philemon is, I want you to accept, receive, welcome him the same way that you would as if I were to show up at your house. Bring this to today. There is someone in our lives that we look up to when it comes to faith, when it comes to Jesus. There's someone that we look up to maybe in culture. If we got an email from them and said, hey, I'm going to be stopping by your house on Friday, I would love to sit down and visit with you. Oh, we get that email and we think, okay, it's Tuesday. I've got from Tuesday to Thursday to figure out what we're going to have for dinner. And I've got to put on fake house, so I've got to clean to make him think that we're clean and organized. So I've got 4 days to do that. I've got to threaten the kids within an inch of their life so they behave. I've got all these things I got to do. And we would get ready and that person would show up. We'd be excited that they were there. We maybe would have questions for them. We'd want to learn from them. We'd give them a hug. We would have, our best dishes out maybe. We'd, have food ready to go when they got there. We would be excited about that event. But if you got the same email from someone right now in life that you're angry at, that you have a grudge against, that you've not talked to in years because you're mad at, if you got the same email from that person, said, hey, I'd love to stop by your house and visit with you on Friday. A lot of us are firing back another email. And hopefully it just says we're busy. Maybe other words. We're probably not putting fake house on. We're probably not even inviting them in, let alone go shopping or invite them in for a meal. We're finding some excuse to get out of it because we don't want to spend time with that person. We've been hurt by that person. We don't want to be around them. Why would we? We're angry at them. We're mad at them. We haven't talked to them in years. Why would we start now when they want to magically stop by? They're good enough for us now. We'd start coming up with all of these excuses. We would not welcome them. We would not want anything to do with them, would we? This is the gravity that Paul is asking of Philemon. He says, listen, the same way that you would treat that special guest that you look up to, that you clean your house for, that you go shopping for, that you invite them in, they sit on your couch, they stay late. That's the same way that I want you to receive or welcome your worst enemy. You see, the depth of forgiveness that Paul is asking for is monumental. He's asking for the same treatment of the man who just wronged Philemon by running away. This word welcome is also found in Romans chapter 15, verse 7, as Paul writes. He says this, accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. Accept one another. Accept the people that wrong you. Receive. It's the same word. Receive the people that have wronged you. In other words, live with forgiveness when it's undeserved, when no one else understands it. Live in such a way, receive people in such a way that we live out the forgiveness that we claim. And then Paul takes it one step further. If this was not enough, if this ask was not enough, he says, if he owes you anything, put it on my tab. Listen, friends, Paul knows full well that Onesimus has a tab with his slave owner. He knows full well that potentially he has stolen from his master before he left in order to get to Rome. He knows full well that Philemon probably had to pay for another worker when Onesimus left, which cost him money. Paul knows full well that wrong has been done. But he also knows that for me to rehash all of those things right now would do no good. It would do no good for Paul right here in this letter to say, I know he ran away from you. I know that made you really mad. I know you had to hire extra workers. I know that he stole something from you. I know that he wronged your household. I know that it kind of put a crunch on your house. I know all of these things happen. He recognizes that would do no good. Because what he is after is forgiveness, not revenge. And there's sometimes we can say that we're after forgiveness, but all we do is talk about the things that have wronged us and the things that have hurt us, and really we're not after forgiveness, we're after revenge. Paul recognizes by stirring this pot, it does no good. Because what Paul is communicating is, I know he has all of this, but Philemon, I'm going to cover that. Philemon, I'm going to cover the tab. I'm going to take care of Onesimus' ticket. I know that he has a debt. Put it on me. I'm going to cover that tab. I'm going to take care of that debt. You see, what Paul understands is that if he's going to claim the riches, then at times he's going to have to live in the rags. If he's going to claim the riches of Christ and the forgiveness of Christ, then there are times where he's going to have to live in the rags of life. For you and for me, if we are going to claim the riches of Christ, then there are times when we need to step into the rags of life. To the point where it does not make sense to the people around us, to the point where people who don't understand Jesus won't understand the forgiveness that we're extending to someone else. You see, what Paul is doing here is Paul is stepping in to the role of a gospel liver and not just a person who has learned about it. Friends, our truth this morning, as Paul makes this request to Philemon for us today, is that we are gospel livers, not just gospel learners. We are people who live out the forgiveness that Jesus has given us, the gospel message of a cross and an empty tomb and forgiveness where he paid our debt. The gospel message, we are to be livers of that, not just learners. If we're here right now and we consistently, week in and week out, if we just learn this message of forgiveness and never extend forgiveness, it's not forgiveness, it's selfishness. We're to be gospel livers and not gospel learners. Jesus people means that we are Jesus practicers. And if we're going to carry the title of grace-filled people, then we need to live a life of grace-filled people. Paul recognizes if I'm going to claim that I am a gospel person, then I'm going to step into the rags of Onesimus' life and I'm going to cover his tab. I'm going to take care of the debt. Because it's not just something I'm learning about. It's who I am. It's how I'm living. You see, Paul's not just a gospel learner. He was a gospel liver. And we are called to do the same. Paul finishes up by saying, he says, I'm writing to you with my own hand. I will pay it back. It's me. And then he says in verse 20, he says, I do wish, brother, that I may have some benefit from you and the Lord refresh my heart in Christ. You see, all the way throughout this letter, there is this more or less family talk. He addresses him as brother. He doesn't address him as friend. He doesn't address him as acquaintance. He doesn't address him as fellow church person. He says brother, which means there's a close connection to the two of them. And what Paul is asking of Philemon, he says, listen, because we're close, practice what you preach to the point that it brings joy, that it brings a refreshment to my soul. Let me benefit from the way that you are living. Let the church benefit based on the way that you are offering forgiveness. I mean, a little bit earlier, he talks about Onesimus, and he says, listen, I would love to keep him here with me because he can do great gospel work, but I know that I need to send him back. He says, Philemon, live in such a way, brother, that you bring forgiveness to the table, and it refreshes my soul. It refreshes the area that is around us. You see, as church people, we should be extending a greater level of forgiveness than anywhere else in society to one another. The greatest place where we should demonstrate forgiveness is in this room with one another. Listen, church people are going to disappoint us sometimes. We're going to disappoint one another. We're not going to live up to maybe what we thought we were going to live up to. We're going to wrong one another. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to disagree with one another. We're going to see church differently. We're going to have different ideas about how church should be done. But we as people of forgiveness, we as people who stand on the same team, we as people who worship and love a Jesus that gives grace to us, we should give grace to one another in deeper levels than anywhere else in our life. We should forgive one another in a deeper way than has ever been done, to where people who are outside of Team Jesus, if you will, they don't understand why we're forgiving one another. They will not understand the reason that we're extending grace. They will question it. But we are choosing to live as gospel livers, not just gospel learners, where we are living a gospel of forgiveness with one another and to everyone else, to the point where it brings refreshment to other people observing. to where other people can say, I want to be able to forgive like they do. The peace that they have in their life is amazing because of the way that they're able to forgive. I want that. If we are going to claim Jesus, then we are to live Jesus because we are gospel livers and not just gospel learners. And so I guess my question this morning is this. Do we have the capacity to love like Jesus? And maybe not just the capacity, but do we have the willingness? Do we have the willingness to love like Jesus, this unconditional level of forgiveness? Do you and I, do we have the willingness and the capacity to love like Jesus, where we are gospel livers and not just gospel learners? So this past week on Friday, I went and I played golf. That wasn't a joke. I went and played golf. I had not played golf in over 7 years. And I don't mean like I just hadn't been to a golf course. I mean I had not picked up a golf club and swung a golf club in 7 years. Nothing. I played a little bit when I was in high school and had fun and played, some of my friends in college. But I had not picked up a golf club in over 7 yeyears. One of the guys here in town says, hey, do you want to play in the Chamber Golf Tournament? And my question was, do you want to win? And he said, no, I just want to go and have fun. And I said, well, I'll make you laugh, I'm sure. And so we show up, we all ride together, we get there, and they had breakfast for us, and it was great. And we had what hole we're supposed to tee off at, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I know these guys, here, no big deal. We're all friends, and so I'm just going to have fun and do my best, and they're going to laugh. And then I find out, hey, you're paired with 4 other guys. 4 people I don't know. 4 people that are good at golf. And they go up and they swing, and I'm like, oh. All right, well, here we go. And so I tee off, and it wasn't too bad, and it was better than one other guy on our team, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. At the beginning of the tournament, when you get there, it was a fundraiser, okay, and you are allowed to purchase mulligans. Okay, mulligans in golf are do-overs. And you were allowed to purchase 4 per team. That was the maximum. So 1 per person. You were allowed to purchase these do-overs, these second tries. Okay? I needed more than just 4 myself, but you were only allowed 4. Okay? So the guy that organized the team and whatever, he paid for the mulligans for us. So it's 18 holes. So someplace in this 18 holes, you can use this mulligan. Do-over, take another shot, and play that one. And so I started out, and it was not atrocious. It wasn't great, but it wasn't atrocious. And I keep thinking to myself, there will be a worse shot someplace where I need to use this mulligan. And so we continue to play and continue to play. We get to lunch. We've got like 6 holes left. I still have not used my mulligan. There's 2 of us on the team. We've not used it. We continue to play, and we continue to play, and we get down to the last hole. Hole 18. I have had 17 previous holes and more than 17 shots that should have deserved a mulligan. I chose not to use it because there's going to be a worse shot. We get all the way down to the 18th hole. And me and Nathan, my brother-in-law, he was on our team, and he was the other guy that had a mulligan left on our team. And so we figured we're going to let the other 2 guys go in front of us because it was a best ball, which means the best shot on the team, that's the one you play the next shot on. Which normally wasn't me or him, but that's okay. But we decided we'd let the other 2 guys go first because if they had a good shot, then we would not use the mulligan. So the first 2 guys, they tee off one of them straight, right down the center where it needed to be. So we didn't use a mulligan. We shot. It wasn't as good as his, but we just played his. And next shot comes up. We all shoot. Someone shot a good shot. Wasn't us, but we weren't using the mulligan because we had his to play. We get all the way down to the green. We have a 6-foot putt left. That's it. Okay, there's 4 of us and there's 2 mulligans. If you're not great at math, that means we have 6 tries to hit a 6-foot shot. Okay? First 2 guys who didn't have a mulligan, they line up. We all sized it up. We did the whole golfer squat, lining it up, We were pretending we knew what we were doing. One of us did. But we line up, and the first 2 guys, first guy gets up, lines it up, takes his shot. goes to the left. The guy after him says, okay, well, I need to go more to the right. So he gets up, he lines up, takes his shot. This time it goes to the right of the cup. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not a genius, I'm not a good golfer, but one goes right and one goes left. I just got to hit it down the center, and we're going to go in the cup. Okay, so I line up, and I, get all ready, and I look down, I size it up, I bring my club back, and I hit it where I thought, right in the center. Here we go. This is it, the victory, right around the cup. Oh. So Nathan goes, and he lines up, and, he lines his putt up, and now he's had 3 times to watch how the ball's going to go on the green and everything like that, and he shoots right around the cup. So now we had 6 times to get a 6-foot putt, and we're down to 2 mulligans. So I get up there. Now I've watched it 4 times. 4 times I watched how a golf ball travels 6 feet. All I have to do is hit it, not any of those 4 ways, and it should go in the cup. I line up, and I take my deep breath, and I relax my shoulders, and I bend my knee. All the things that they tell you good golfers do, I pretended. Okay, so I lined up, and I'm sizing it up, that 6 foot right there. I draw my club back. I hit the ball smooth and easy. I watch as it glides towards the cup, only to shift and not go in the cup. So now here we are, 6 tries to get a 6-foot putt. We're down to 1 last mulligan. Nathan gets up. If there wasn't enough pressure here, every guy, the other team, they had already made their putt. We're all standing there, which means there's 7 of us glued in, watching him go after this 6-foot putt. Last time out of 6 tries, he lines up and gets his putter set. He draws his club back. He had sized everything up. He hits the ball smooth. It glides towards the cup and goes around it. And there was a continuous awe around our cup. Like, you failed. You didn't do it. But no one wanted to say that, of course. And so we picked the ball up and, we left that hole, ending our day. Looking back on it, there was so many times where I should have used my mulligan where it would have counted. Like the time that I teed off and I didn't even hit it past the women's tee. All right? If you don't know anything about golf, that's a little bit in front of where I hit it, not very far. I should have used it then, but I didn't. I should have used it when I shanked my 5-wood and the ball went 3 feet to the right. I should have used it then, but I didn't. I should have used it when I had about a 6-foot chip shot and I hit it over the green. I should have used it then, but I didn't. I just kept saving it for when it really would matter. And then in the end, it turned out it did not matter. I saved it and I saved it and I saved it. And then it did not make a difference. I should have used it earlier on. And friends, this morning there are a lot of us when it comes to this topic of forgiveness that we're just holding on to it. We should have used it and had the conversation with our family member that we've not talked to in years over that one argument. We should have used it then, but we just continue to hold on to it when maybe we feel more ready. We hold on to our forgiveness that we should sit down and have the conversation with our spouse and bring forgiveness to the table. But we're just not ready to let go yet, and so we just continue to hold on to it. We should have sat down and had the conversation with the coworker or the person in town that we're angry at and that we held a grudge against for years, but we just don't want to let go yet, and so we just hold our forgiveness. And there's opportunity after opportunity where we should use the forgiveness. We should use the mulligan in our life, and we just keep holding on to it. And you know what's going to happen? We're going to hold on to it, and it's going to be too late. We're going to hold on to it, and we're not going to be able to have that conversation. We're going to hold on to it, and we're going to find ourselves in court, and our marriage is a wreck. And we should have had the conversation. We're going to hold on to it, and the family member is going to pass away, and we're going to spend the rest of our life saying, I wish I would have. We're going to hold on to it. And our kids aren't going to talk to us. We're going to hold on to it. And it's going to be too late. And it won't matter. If we are going to be Jesus' people, then we're going to be Jesus livers. If we're going to be gospel people, then we're going to live the gospel. And when people disappoint and when people disagree, we're called to bring forgiveness to the table. There's some of us this morning that we are holding on to the forgiveness that Jesus offers us, and we've just yet to accept it. We just want to keep living life our way, and I'll get to that Jesus thing someday. Yeah, I'll live with hope of heaven someday, but right now I just want to live it up here, and if we're not careful, we're going to miss it. If we're going to be gospel people, then we're going to be gospel livers, where we live in the mulligans and the rags of life, and we bring forgiveness to the table where no one else understands it and where it's not deserved. If we're not just going to learn of a gospel and a Jesus who loves us and died for us and forgives us, if we're not going to go and live that out in the mulligans of life and the do-overs of life and the second chances of life, let us be people who live out the mulligans of life, the second chances of life. Let us be people that because our mulligan was purchased, we step into the rags of other people and we bring forgiveness to the table. Not where it's earned, not when it's deserved. But when we decide to follow Jesus, we decided to be people of forgiveness. Why don't we go ahead and stand together? There's some of us this morning that as we worship right now, if we're really honest deep down inside of us, we right now are living as a slave to hurt in the past. Our life is defined by the grudges that we hold. Our life is defined by the anger that resides inside of us. Our life is defined by the forgiveness that we did not extend, and maybe you're already at the point where you realize it's too late. And the best thing about being Jesus people is that Jesus already took care of that hurt. You see, at a cross, he took care of those mulligans that we didn't get right. And he offers us this second chance. He pays for our mulligan. And he says, listen, you have value and you have purpose. I want you to be a Jesus person. And so I'm extending you the gospel message. And because of Jesus, this morning we can worship and we can sing that we are not a slave to that past. We're not a slave to that hurt. We're not a slave to our anger and our grudges. But because of Jesus, we have the power to overcome them. Because of Jesus, we have hope to walk through the dark moments of life. Because of Jesus, we can break free from that anger and resentment and struggle. And we can live in freedom of the gospel message of Jesus. We're not here, friends, to be gospel learners. We're here to be gospel livers. Because of what Jesus did for us, do we have the capacity and the will to love like Jesus? Maybe as we worship, maybe it's a conversation with someone in the room. And maybe as we worship and we sing, we just need to go find that person and give them a hug. And we extend forgiveness. We stand in the rags of the wrong and we say, I'm sorry. Maybe it's our spouse. Maybe it's one of our kids. Maybe we recognize this morning that, listen, I need all the help I can get on this Jesus thing, and I need to be a part of a community that wants to follow Jesus. And so I want to be a member. What Crossroads is doing here, I want to do this Jesus thing together with other people. And maybe this morning as we worship, we have held on to the forgiveness that Jesus is giving us. And before it's too late, friends, and before it doesn't matter, maybe this morning we choose to be gospel people. Because we're gospel people, that means that we're gospel livers. Let's worship together.